Welcome to the Embodied Business Show. I am so excited today. I connected with today's guest on Instagram and we have just hit it off. It has been like a whole thing of us talking about completely different realms and different spaces. And today we're going to be bringing that through today's topic. Now, this guest is a little bit special. It's a little bit different because of where we have been discussing and where we have been playing. Now, her work is beyond this realm. That's what I'm going to say for now. So we have with us today, Georgie. She is a quantum dimensional shaman, I should say, as well as a generational seer and visionary. And from my gathering and my understanding, this has moved the biggest things for a lot of, how do I say it? I'm trying to get my words right now because I feel like there's an energy thing that's happening with me as I'm talking, but it feels like there's so much here, knowing that you have worked with multi-million-dollar companies, advised billion-dollar companies, allowed yourself to really sit in the seat of, I can see beyond what is currently here. There is some big, big work at play with your work. So welcome, Georgie, to the Embodied.
Yes. What a beautiful introduction. And I am pumped to be here. I'm so excited. And we did hit it off immediately. And I felt really honored that you wanted to have this conversation. Embodied business.
So welcome. I literally lost my words mid-introduction there because I could feel something just moving through me really fast. I was like, oh, hello, we're on. We are on.
Sorry about that. I tend to kind of start swirling the energy when I'm like getting ready to dive into juicy conversation. I'm like, all right, let's turn it on. And it starts moving very quickly.
It was definitely moving. I could feel it through my body. And I feel really hot right now, which is great because that means we are turning on. Life force is here. We are activated. I am really excited to have this conversation with you because, this whole podcast has been built on people living and breathing their truth in what they're here to create in their craft and their life, and really being a stand for, like, it doesn't have to be done the old school way of building business, right? Like, it's really about people owning their gifts and owning their certain power and how they present themselves to the world. And this is why I was like, I have to get you on because what you do is so different from what most coaches and advisories and people who are in that position do. So I would love, and I don't normally get people to do this, but I'd love a little bit of a background, like, because obviously I've given the title of generational seer, visionary, quantum dimensional shaman. Like, there's people probably like, what the fuck does this lady
is this?
Right? Like, I'd love for you to give just a little bit of background on how you got into this work, but more so like what your work actually brings to the world, because it's like when you say it, it's much specialer than when I say
it. I still struggle with the English language of this, with even putting it into words, because it is so universally all encapsulating, you know what I mean? And so it's hard for me to even explain in words what takes place. And I try to pinpoint that so that when I am asked, I don't just sit there with like glazed over look in my eye, like, well, how would you like your acorn delivered? How would you like your nutshell? But so to give you a little bit of background, yeah, what the fuck does seer, generational, like all this, what does this mean? So let me kind of bring it into a story form. Basically, I was born 45 years ago. And at that moment, I was born actually 2 months early and was just at about 3 pounds, had a hole in my heart. They were like, we don't know if we're going to make it, whatnot. There were some things there, difficulties. But in that, I had awareness. I was present and conscious. I have never not had awareness. And that comes from my family lineage, which was unspoken, by the way. I did not know until really the last, I would say, decade, the depths of how deep the generational part of our seer, intuitive, wise women goes. And that's Native American ancestry. That's our family lineage piece of the women in my family. And even kind of to touch in on that, when I was in my early 20s, I started having, I have to back it up even further. When I was around 9 or 10, I started having my Native American ancestors come and teach me and visit me and explained, the way that the energy world works. even before then, I have stories. I'm going to circle back. We're going to kind of go in some circles. I'll try not to be too ADD because that's not what's happening here. We're just moving through some circulars that my ancestry and other dimensional beings have been my teachers since birth. Since birth, I have seen my awareness. I have been present to my consciousness. That's not something you language at 2 months early or even 2 years old, but it came through my presence and the way that I showed up in the world, and it was felt. That's something my mom's like, you were felt. Your presence was very felt, and it unnerved a lot of people. It made them either love me or feel very uncomfortable because I could see through any of the pretenses, any of the things that they were not being honest with themselves, not intentionally lying about, but not being honest with themselves. I could visually see with my eyes. I could hear the texture in the word, so their frequency, their language, their words has information and that my ears hear. My body could sense it. And it's been kind of like that always. And it only went into stronger development as I grew. And then the ancestors started coming. The dimensional beings started coming about the time I was 4 and 3 and coming to teach me. People's passed on dead relatives were coming in the area. I grew up in an area with Confederate soldiers, and I'd be like, ooh, they look like they're from a different time, and I was just a baby basically watching this. And I always had awareness. Even I was just talking to my mom about this, that even at less than 1 years old, I remember exactly the room that we lived in, and it wasn't a home we stayed in very long, but I remember exactly where the window was. I could see her face and remember these moments with her, recognizing that outside of the window, there were some, not really, there were spirits that felt a little heavier and a little unnerving, right? I felt uncomfortable by them. And so being able to recognize the difference of texture and light and those really, really subtle differences, that is what that means to me. Everyone has a different language. A lot of times when we talk about seers, it can be translated in a lot of different ways. For me, I see people's energy bodies. I see their physical bodies. I see their ancestors. I see their other lifetimes. I see anything that is there to see. I see anything in the universe that has consciousness. If I look and I put my attention towards it, I can see and translate and understand the information. It's really overwhelming and really freaking cool at the same time. I've never been bored a second in my life. So then the quantum dimensional shaman piece that came in really because my soul origin, as from other planetary orbits and systems, the way that my soul understands existence was educated by other dimensional beings and other realms throughout my whole life. I've been in several near-death circumstances, one really close to, they were all near death, right? And then one significant near-death experience where I saw reality shift in front of my eyes, like literally the whole world and what was possible. And it shifted in front of my eyes. And I was able to live where a moment before I had not had that. That was not a possibility. So those experiences kind of give you an idea as to what we're talking about. When we talk about quantum dimensional shaman, it's because I understand the light and energy and dimensional language of the universe, whereas some shamans really work with the earth. I understand the earth and I understand the language of plants and the air and the animals and our stars, the way that that all translates and moves together, coming from my ancestors and what they taught me of the Native American side. But my strengths and gifts are really in understanding the nuances of our universal dimensional existence and how we can dance and play with that energy.
So cool. And I think so many people spend their entire life looking for this piece, right? I know how much I've sat with ayahuasca and peyote and all these things to experience exactly what you're living on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, it really is if I would say from what people have experienced, I still want to try ayahuasca. I've only ever tried mushrooms because honestly, my world is so much like a psychedelic trip 90% of the time. And luckily I've learned to dial it in and out. So I'm honestly pretty regulated with it all. It's not jarring for the most part any longer. But with that, I think that I'm walking proof, and I know so many of us are, but I have full consciousness and communication with understanding that this is accessible to us at any time, even without having to dive into ayahuasca. That's how many people access it. And that's their place and that's their portal. And it's beautiful. But we have access to that at any moment as well.
Yeah. I think that was one of the biggest learnings I ever had in my life, was like knowing that I could take this and have those experiences in my own life, like even just through breath, like even just through like
Yes.
getting so deep in the body that you are present with all of it is so, so cool. So I'm curious, right? Having opened up to this world through such a young age and through like being literally exposed to different things at such a young age, what made you say yes to then using this in a way where you get to serve humanity? What was that piece?
I think I'm still saying yes to that. I mean, honestly, let me put that into two categories. The
Yeah.
yes wasn't the question, and living in this way was like the same for me as breathing. And it was something I didn't talk about. If you would go back to certain friend circles outside of very few people, mainly my mom knew of some experiences. It was not talked about because I already knew the world wasn't existing. The communication and the majority of people weren't accessing this. And anytime I
Mm.
tried to kind of broach conversations, even as a 5-year-old, I had conversations in like preschool, and I'm like, the universe is like this, and somebody's like, I'm stealing your Doritos, and I'm like, oh, okay, we're not talking about the same things right now. So there was like an understanding that my world it was just very much a part of how I lived and breathed and existed. And then learning how to shift that and heal that and shift timelines and the texture of our collective and work. It's like I'm the kind of person, if you put me in a box, I'm going to sit in the box and figure out the solution of how to get out of the box. So with all of our, collective boxes and pattern systems that feel outdated or feel stuck, I've worked through my whole life. I'm very experiential.
Mm.
I want to try it all, leap off every cliff, taste every paint, like dip my hand in paint as a kid, eat it. Like I went to the hospital so many times because I had to explore everything and get my hands on it and experience it. And so that was my way of working through the way that we had our patterns set in place. So that part of it, the unseen that I was doing all on my own, like even now, I was telling a friend, I might be in the shower or might be peeing or something, just like going into a bathroom, sitting down to pee, and then be shown a vision of something that's happening in our collective. And I'm like, well, that sucks. Why are we playing out this pattern? And then I
Mm.
do quantum energetic work to shift it. And that's, and then I move back into whatever else I was doing. So that's never been a no. But then moving into feeling safe to express that invisible world and talk about that is something that I've danced with at different points. And then at times I would retract and close back into. And now we really are in a density space, an awakening space as a collective where it's time for me to actually share the ways that I've been able to build things in the physical world in unique ways that externally people would always say, how are you doing that? What are you doing? How did you make that happen? How did you meet these people? And there were reasons that was true. I just never talked about the actual reasons. I would brush it off and say, oh, I'm just lucky. I'm just
Mm.
good at manifesting, that kind of thing. And really, there's a whole system and methodology behind it, right?
Mm. I'm curious, like having said all that, did you ever try to go down the like, I'm going to shut this down and do the whole muggle thing and like not live like this? Because I feel like there's a lot
Yeah.
of, and not just women, men who also feel this and they're in that current position right now, right?
Yeah, I know of many people like this as well, where they're coming in line to I see our gifts. I see my gifts. Each of us have the same access. We might not have the calling to be a shaman. We might not want to almost die several times or have to go to the initiations I've been through. And I don't blame you. Like, I don't blame anybody for not. I don't recommend it for the average person that wants to just, have a nice life. Because it's not always easy. But I would say we all have that access, and it can be really jarring when you're coming online to that and not quite understand what to do with it and what that means and how to place it in your life, right? And so
Mm,
for me, I would say, were there times I tried to turn it off? Yes and no. I mean, I definitely in my 20s, I loved to go dancing and party and drink, 6 nights a week. I was like drinking and going to the clubs and dancing, but it never shut off. No matter how much I drank, I didn't have an escapism. Luckily,
mm,
that wasn't one of my situations, challenges to work through. But
yeah.
in that, it never shut down. So I was still reading people in the club. So I'd be completely drunk and like, oh, there's this and this about you. Oh, I should go over here. That's a little bit of a danger zone. It's like I could still have full consciousness and awareness, which kind of defeats the purpose of drinking that much, right? So it just doesn't turn off. And so, nor do I want it to be honest. I think that it was just so knowing in me that this is a part of who I am and it's not something to turn off. There's definitely been times in my life where I've just focused more on thinking that I wanted, marriage that looked a certain way, and not marriage in general, but I wanted more of an idealized, societally conditioned like way of living. And
Mm.
it was miserable. I mean, not my marriage, but and we divorced and we're friends still after 2 marriages and 2 divorces together. But we were like, okay, this dynamic isn't for us. But the way of that conditioning of trying to force myself into some box and into some idealized version of what I needed to be, I could never do it. And I still can't do it. It's like I'm meant to break out of those molds.
I love that you said that, hey, because I remember years back when I was first, I guess I'd always had it as well, like this sort of gift, probably not to the level at which you hold, right? But I'd always had something that was going on internally. And I was like, what is this? Like, why can't I settle? Why can't I be happy? And so my life was
Mm,
the same thing, right? Like constantly doing this. And I remember I was probably about 10 years into like really accessing this part of me. And I had also gone down the self development road with it, right? So I'm like literally in the middle of this whole journey. And I remember I had like studied like my master's in NLP and I studied all the things like the things that you're meant to have, like that will make you successful. Like I'd
yes,
done
yes.
all the qualifications and stuff. And I remember laying on the floor one day and I was like, I'm talking like fully hunched over in the fetal position, just being like, I just wish I didn't know any of this. It's too painful knowing all of this because I'd become victim to actually seeing something beyond myself as opposed to owning the power of it. And,
Mm,
you know, in that, like the next 24 hours, I called one of my Reiki masters and I was like, I'm feeling like this. Like, is this like, what's going on here? Like, why am I feeling like this? And she's just like, look, this is part of the initiation to you actually owning the power, but you have to learn to surrender to it, not to try and control it. Have you
yes.
had moments in your life where
Oh
like
my
similar
God.
things have happened?
Yes. Time and time and time again. Every time that I think that we try to hold on, I know this has been my experience where I'm like, oh, good. I've got this life put together and I built this little foundation and it looks like this and I'm ready to go and I'm going to build my house. I'm going to build my life. And then it all comes ripping apart because I'm not meant to make it like that, right? My way of grounding in the world. And for many of us, I think the grounding happens internally with our truth and who we are. And that's where we're meant to anchor and ground. And every time we try to anchor in illusions and in fears and conditioning, it's not going to end well. The more that we can just roll with the discomfort and know that our souls genuinely love that part too, and that it's
Mm,
actually helping us fly into the most incredible moments of our life, even when you are on the ground. And I mean, I'm obviously speaking from personal experience, but on the ground crying so hard, you're literally vomiting on yourself because you're so just ripped off. I mean, so viscerally gross, right? But but that's a part of it, right? Like there are periods of times and things that we go through that feel like there's no way we're going to make it. There have been times I've prayed to God to make it like, I'm like, okay, that's it. I'm ready to go. You know, when I have been almost close to near death experience, it's like, I can't die off it. I have this like instinct and impulse of like, yes, I'm here. Like, I want to stay. And then in those moments, and really only one time I would say, did it really get so intense and the feelings and the pain that I was letting go of every ounce of life as I had known it, everything I had spent a lifetime building, every person in my life as I had known them, I had to let go. And when I let go and I gave my brain, I held my head and said, I love you, brain. We can have the grace we need to go through this as long as it takes. If we need to feel mushy, if we need to feel upset, it's fine, you know, and the rest of it, I took a good sleep. I rested, I regenerated, and it all unfolded. And it set me into pathways that I never could have seen and imagined before. And there had been other times previously in my life where, you know, you have these experiences, but there are these moments that break you open and they feel like you're never going to get through it. You and I share the past of having experienced, you know, abuses and deeply scarring trauma, right? But I know I'll speak through my lens is I knew even in those moments, I had an inner knowing that somehow, and this is not to bypass anyone's trauma. If someone's dealing with abuse, I always say, find your way out of those situations, right? Find your way to healthier spaces. But in those moments for me, even as a very young child, somehow something in me knew that it was for me. And that's a very odd thing to say, but I knew it was for me. And I knew it was guiding me on pathways that I couldn't understand, that somehow my soul had signed up for and knew. And that's not to make light out of darkness. It's to embody the darkness and the light because there's beauty in both of those places.
I resonate so much with what you just shared there. I remember, just to give a quick story, just to tangibilize this for some people, I remember I was like 8 years old and my mum was digging through the couch trying to find enough money to buy a 99-cent loaf of bread, like back in the day when bread was like under $1. And she was angry and she was frustrated. And she was like, shut up, I'm trying to find money. And like, you know, I can tell in her time at that moment, herself in that moment of time was in survival. She's trying to get the thing right. And I had this like deep, like, it's okay. This won't be your life. Like, it's okay. And it was like that anchored me through every experience from then on in. So I so resonate with that. And I think so many people push that bit down when they know that. They have this innate knowing that there's something greater for them and they keep squashing it and squashing it. And it's funny you say about like how we spend our life trying to build safety. Like I'm currently in this transitional period where we're deciding like, are we going to move overseas or not? Like, and we've built such a safe life here. Like physically.
Yes, do it. Come to the States. Come on over.
Well, that's what we're playing with the idea of. And like, I don't want to give anyone false hope that it's going to happen right now, but we're throwing it out. We're seeing what's possible. And the more that we're just being with it, it's like, yep, 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 yep. All the yeses are lining up. But the only thing that's not lining up is giving up the freedom of everything, like the safety of everything that we've built here. So it's like, are you willing to make the risk for what's here, like on a bigger scale for you? Like that's what I keep anchoring into. And it's like the safety comes through knowing the vision, knowing self, knowing where you're moving through. So it's huge what you're saying there. I really, really resonate with that.
1,000,000%. We really associate our safety with the tangibility of what we can create. I try very hard to do that as well. It is, I get like punched in the head by the universe. Like, God, like every time I try to settle into that, I'm like, okay, good. Now I know how that's going to go. And I'm like, you know, like just kidding, you know, just kidding. And it's because some people, that is a part of their journey to anchor into things and to have lives that are more formed and tangible. That's where they learn their challenges. Remind me again, Case, aren't you a 3-5 in human design?
5-1.
You're 5-1, but the 5-1, the 5 line that we were talking about, like, it's like, I have to be in motion, and not because I'm running away from things, but my way of grounding in this world is within myself. And when I try to anchor, I lose all of the things that are part of me. Like, I'm here to explore so many different stories and experiences. And I mean, when I tell my stories of life and things I've tried and done and experienced, they make no sense to so many people. If we were to lay it out on a linear, it would be like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, what have you done? And what's happening with this? You know, it looks like so crazy and wild. But to me, those are the stories and those are the textures that my soul wanted to experience, that I needed to learn about. And there's absolutely no way I could have done that if I were anchored to a home, which I did have a home. And you know what? It was beautiful. And I felt suffocated and stuck almost every day that I was there. I was really happy and cozy and comfortable and safe. And then I felt like, oh my gosh, this is it. Like it completely was like pulling my energy down. It was pulling my momentum down, because I am a person that's meant to be the bird that flies ahead, and flies high.
I so resonate with that too. Everything you're saying today is just like, it's just happening. It's funny, actually, last year I went through this space where my injury like really flared up, and I was like hating on life, like full, like just not able to connect to myself, like my higher self, my truth of what we're here for. And that piece of like, when we're still, that's when it like, we can get stuck and stagnant, just resonated so loudly in that for me. So thank you for bringing that in here. I'm really curious, because obviously we've talked a lot about why you do things, and like when you work with, like, because I know that you work with high level entrepreneurs, women who are really building big spaces for themselves to impact humanity. How, like, and I know you're not going to give me the details of the how, but does your work differentiate from other people who are in this space that do like coaching and leadership work and those sorts of things?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And, because right now, for those of us that are in coaching and leadership work, it feels like, we're all friends because we all gravitate towards one another, right? So then all we see every day on our feeds are each other's faces. And so it feels like, I can't do this because so-and-so did that, right? Or, that's exactly what I was doing. And it's really easy to fall trap into that experience of one another. And so for a while, even when I was coming online about my spirituality, I thought, maybe I just waited too long to talk about this. I don't have the desire of like, let me be in the forefront to just share all of this, like, just because I feel like, oh, I need to share all of this. I live it. That's who I am. And that's my change and impact on the world, is by living it. It impacts the change and the shift already for the entire universe. And as does the rest of us, with our own unique essence, with our own expression of our oneness energy that we all are. And so when we shift the lens and we consider that we're all in oneness of one another, we're all this spark of light that exists in an entire universe together. And how do we want to play? How do we want to express that? I could say exactly the same thing as you, and it might be heard, felt, and experienced light years differently, right? Because we're different in the way our essence is expressed, because that is our purpose. And so I think with the way the leadership, and things like that, we all attract and magnetize who it is that we're meant to. And it's really easy to get caught up in the way that we attract our next client. And I've never played into that game. There have been times like I fully will go on Instagram and I'm like, this sucks. Like, how am I ever going to do anything? Because remember, like, the majority of my business background I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. I started sitting in boardrooms when I was a child, coloring, watching multimillionaires and startup people, like, mom and pop businesses. And I was seeing their energetics. I'm like, oh, well, if that's what you want, and this is where you think you're going, you're off here, 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 and here. I could understand. So I was in training even from very, very young ages. My experience of what I attracted and manifested, along with relationships, came before internet, before there was internet. I'm not that old, but
It was just dial up back then.
yeah, it actually was dial-up. This was like, you know, uh, like, just to give you like two examples, right? Like, and I'm going to turn the lens from business coaching into relationship, right, for a minute.
Love it.
Because we're magnetic, we can kind of tangibly understand that whether you're a coach or not. But
Yeah,
so I was dating someone not super nice in high school. And I was like really starting to break through these patterns of like, why am I in this? Like amping up my own self-worth, getting in touch with myself again, like, oh yeah, I forgot. I don't need this situation. But so it was exactly in that moment that I was making big changes. I was in the car with my mom and was outside the building of my first apartment. I think I was just turning 18, but I was in college. And so I was like, okay, like pulling up to my first apartment. So I'd been doing all this inner work. I was like magnetic in my own force. And I see this guy walking down the stairs. And I said, holy fuck, I'm going to marry that guy. And I knew it. Like it just like flipped out of my mouth. You know what I mean? And so I knew it. And I didn't see this guy for like 6 months later. And he kind of like smiled because I think he could felt the energy of like the intensity of what just took place, even though we really weren't looking at each other. Like we were a little bit of a distance apart. But so I didn't see him again for 6 months, but we got married, and not only married once, but married twice. And we're still, 20 something years down the road, like extreme, like we're soul family. And the dynamics of the depth of that attraction, of that magnetism that came from working on my inner story and letting my energy magnetize what it was. And now the other story that I'll have about business, just to give you, because I love this story. This is so cool to me. So I was actually in college when this took place, and I was in an advertising class. I studied business and strategy, marketing, advertising, that kind of stuff. So this was like in an advertising class. And I was like finding these ad campaigns that I was really drawn to do a case study on, right? And I found this one that was like this ad for, it was a watch company. It was like really specific at the time. It was luxe. It was like daring, avant-garde. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know why. Like, I love this. Like, it just like drew to me and spoke to me. And everybody was like, why are you flipping out about this ad so hardcore? Like, what's the big deal? And like, no, I love it. Like, it was like so intensely magnetic for me. And I was just like, it stuck with me. Right. And I'm like, well, whatever. You couldn't see this guy's face. You couldn't see, like, it was just like kind of an abstract ad, but something about it grabbed me so hard. So fast forward about 6 years later, I was actually living on the other side of the country, had graduated college, had actually gotten divorced, like started doing all these big things in business and like working with really cool, brands and businesses and things. And I walk into a house of some friends that I also worked with. They were actually in New Zealand, not far from you, right? Australia, New Zealand, not super far. But anyway, they were like a vodka company. They were there building a vodka company in Los Angeles. And so I was going to a house party where we were like, trying out all their product. And I walk in and like get hit with this like feeling again, different than with my husband. It just hit with like, oh, I know somebody. And I see this guy across the way, and then come to find out we end up being friends, in relationship, business partners, like just really expanding and evolving one another, like a deep soul connected friendship. It's the guy from the ad campaign.
You can't make
The
this
internet
stuff up.
had nothing to do with this, right? So when we get like so wrapped up about like internet, and we do magnetize, like you and I felt pinged like to connect, right? So I still listen to those same instincts of who do I want to connect with. And sometimes it's like, oh, I like how they dress. I like that look or whatever. But the majority of the time, we're magnetizing our clients because they're attracted to our energy. They're attracted to what we know, what they know that we can do. That is generally unspoken. If you look at my Instagram page, it says hardly nothing about, I'm working on this, you guys. I'm so sorry. It's like a whole scary, visible world that like I've lived all of my life basically not talking about the thing that now I'm here to talk about. And so talk about like needing to break down my own fear patterns, right? But so I'm working on it. But that's not where that's not how we connect to our clients. So when we're talking about coaching, I get curious, and I've talked to other friends that are coaches like, oh, you're in quantum energetics, so how are you doing this? Right. And a lot of times when people are talking about quantum energy, they're talking about timelines, right? Have like some people are newer to this word quantum. And I only probably 6 years ago, my guides and team were like, you need to start using the word quantum. And I'm like, that feels like, I don't know why. And I'm like, because what I do is actually beyond that. It's not the best description, but it's the only description that's available at the moment for what is happening. Right. And so when you talk to when we speak to certain things in quantum energetics, or when we talk about things like coaching, there's so many more nuances with the way each of us express and interpret that. That's where we make a shift for our clients. That's how we attract our partners. That's how we bring in career opportunities. It's different because we're different. The way we express our oneness of the universe is in our own unique ways. And just the same as my story is dynamic of the seeing visions. Like, I mean, the experiences I could tell you, like I've literally time hopped portals like to other countries and other time places, and I ended up in India in another timeline. And I'm like, whoa, what's this about? It's so fascinating. It's like all of these wild stories of that kind of thing, or aliens or demons or all of that. Or we could go down the rabbit hole of business and how I've manifested, magnetized, and like done crazy things, or relationships. But those are my ways of expressing my oneness in the universe. That's my personality and my joy to get to express. And then I think for each of us, we're awakening not to like, oh, well, I'm Georgie because I am a seer and because I'm a quantum dimensional shaman, right? Yeah, sure. Maybe not many people are online to that right now, but those gifts are accessible to all of us. And that's actually not my uniqueness.
I love that you say that, because I remember years back, like way before I understood that everyone had these gifts, I would like seek out psychics and I'd like seek out people to do it. And then one of my girlfriends who actually, she like specializes in business strategy through psychic modalities, like that's her whole thing. She was like to me, you can do this too. Like, I'm not the only person who can do this. Like, I'm like, wait, what? And she actually showed me how to open a lot of this and realizing that, I was already doing it. I just didn't know I was doing it. Right.
Exactly.
Like, it's so potent. So I love that you are such a big stand for it. Like, it's not just me who can do this. Like, everyone can do this. Because I think that's when you know that someone's really tapped in, because there's like an egoic level that can come with shamanism for those who aren't in true service, where they're like, I hold the power. Like, whereas it's like, you can see when someone's really playing in the depths of it, they're like, no, you hold the power. This is your piece. And I actually wanted to comment too, because you said about the whole, like, you'd been having these people in your spaces for years and years and years. I was talking to one of my mentors and I found this so hilarious the other day. I'm talking to her and we're sitting down and she started talking about her previous like life and experiences and stuff. And I realized that when I was like 13, I loved the song Murder Reigns by Ja Rule. And I would like listen to it all the time, over and over and over again. And I found out that that was actually her voice. That was Alexi Panos singing that piece. And I was like,
no way.
no way, you've been in my ears since like I was 12 and I had no idea. And so she had to go through that whole life to become the person who she is as well. And it's like, it's just crazy how like the vibrational pull is always there, always at play, right? So powerful.
It's huge. It's so powerful. And we're sitting over here so worried. How will I meet my soulmate? How am I going to meet my clients? How is it all going to make sense? And we just surrender and dance in that. It does all come together. Are you there?
Yeah, we're there. We just almost had a moment there where it glitched. So good. So I am mindful of time. I try and keep these like around 40 minutes or so.
Amazing.
But I have a really big question that I want to ask you. And it's something that I ask nearly every guest that comes on here is, if this were the last time that anyone were to ever hear you speak or hear something come through you, what would it be that you would want them to hear?
Hmm. I would say nothing. No, I'm just kidding. The
I
silence,
was
the
like, oh
things
my
that comes to
God.
mind is I think what comes to mind is in silence. It's like in this very quiet inner knowing and self. And that's what I would want everyone hearing my last words to say. And that was the thing that really struck with me, even in my near death experience, as I was driving off a cliff, about to drop into a ravine, recognizing the power of that inner knowing, recognizing the power of our intention, that those thoughts, that our words hold seeds of creation, and that as we are strongly standing in that, from the place of in a calm, right? We're in the middle of chaos. We're in the middle of our calm. So it's not like we're just in meditative state, and it's not like we're over here running around crazy and frenzied. We're in a place of interconnectedness. And from that place, we're making decisions and choices. And through that alignment, anything is possible and everything is possible.
I love that so much. So much. So obviously I'm going to place all of your details in the show notes, but is there anything specifically that you would like the audience to know about you or what you have coming up or any of those pieces?
Yeah, sure. They can find me. What's coming up is more content, like more conversations. I want to hear from everybody listening. What do you want to know about the energetics of the universe, about the way frequency forms everything in our world? How can I share my stories and my experiences in a way that will help you really alchemize your own lives and bring these tools into very accessible, tangible placement for you? So I want to hear from everybody listening. What did you take away from this episode? What do you want to dive more deeply into? Because I am sharing more of these stories in my Instagram, in my podcast, and the Calm, which I'm so excited you're coming on as well. I cannot wait. And so that's where, the connection and the conversations happen, is in that I want people to connect. I want people to reach out. I want people to dive into their own empowerment through my life and stories and experiences, and realize their own ability to make that change and shift in their lives as well.
So beautiful. So beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on and just
Such
sharing.
a pleasure.
So
It's
good to
been
have you.
amazing. Yes, I love
Mm.
it. Thank you so much for having me. I cannot wait to connect further. And I'm gonna fingers crossed that you make your way across the pond.
I think there's a lot of people with their fingers crossed and doorways are just opening up right now. So don't
Yes,
worry, I'll let you know what I do.
amazing.
All right. Thank you so much, my love. I've loved this conversation. And guys, check Georgie out. She does some incredible work. And like just right now, being in your field, you can feel your energy. Like it
Yeah,
is.
is there anything you want to shift? Like while we're here, like you're actually we're in a
Oh,
portal right now. If you want to
we
kind of
are in
like,
a field. I could feel you when you tapped in before. I don't know if there's something I particularly want to shift. Is this? I'm actually curious to know what you see or what you would think needs to shift.
I think attachment to
Mm,
all of the next steps and chapters, right? Because there's, as
mhm,
we were, what came to mind as you were talking about the fear of staying in safety is,
mhm,
as you let go of the attachment to one side of that or the other, in either case, maybe the timing is aligned and maybe the timing is right for you to move and make this big leap. But in either case, you're being called to really surrender the attachment to both sides of the outcome so that you can really elevate and move into this next chapter of who you are, whether it's in a new existence of way of being there where you are and having new whole openings of business, of life, of family, of friends, or whether it's taking all that energy and directing it stateside.
Yeah.
So it's an attachment. So if you want to go ahead and give that permission, say yes,
Yeah.
and let it shift, set that intention.
Yeah. I can feel that already.
Yeah, it's actually, I see it unwinding. See, the intention is the PowerPoint. It's the piece. The key is setting that intention and acknowledging you have the ability to shift that within yourself. And it helps to have all the portals kind of open that we're working with too. It kind of moves it really quickly.
Yeah, I can feel it like pull right through my throat and through my chest, like powerful.
Very strongly, yeah. Oh, amazing. And your third eye vision is ready to unlock more as well. So you can go ahead and give that permission.
Yes, please. I'm chuckling because at the beginning of this like podcast, I was like, oh, I think she's gonna like activate something in me. I had that thought and I can feel that already. So like my whole body is just heating up and I can feel this energy moving so strongly.
It's very, it's, I guess it's like the blessing and the curse of being my friend is like, if we're in proximity or connecting, like it just, sorry, it's going to, yeah, sorry,
No,
we're going to show
totally fine. It's totally fine. I've had, this week has been quite big physically for me, like running multiple retreats and like doing things. And I'm like really tired and I can feel myself just like opening right back up.
Yeah.
So it's so
it's
cool.
like there's like a huge portal around you and you're like really beautifully surrendering into that. I can see too, which is so fun. So fun when someone's not kicking and screaming to like what's moving around them.
There's that also, there's the like, I'm in facilitation right now and I'm like wanting to receive, you know, how you're like in that dance, like, well, I should speak for myself in that dance right now, but I can feel this all just moving really like easily actually.
Yeah, you can actually, so with this energy and what's around you, because have tapped into quantum energetics, is there's no like, not only you're doing a great job of receiving and opening up, but it's almost like you're watching it a little bit. You can let go and it's going to move like 100 times faster.
Yeah.
And you can say yes and set that intention and give that permission.
Yes.
Woo, there you go.
Oh, wow.
And let it unlock in your physical body as well. Just say yes and give that intention.
Yes.
Ooh, it's a party over there. Yeah.
So you're going to have everyone lining up to work with you now. It's like real time. I feel like this just like light just through me right now.
There's
just
pouring light, just pouring.
Yeah. But it also feels like it's pulling out energy that's like, just, I wouldn't say dead, but it's just like, we're done.
It's no longer neat. It's like, so I know we're like wrapping up this call, but while we're doing this session. But so the thing with energy and as we shift things, the way that I like to talk about it is our emotions, our own identities, the things that we're attached to. Everything is energetic and everything is frequency. And it's like we have designated all of our past versions of self through all time and space to play certain roles and exist as certain movies for us. And so when we come into this space together, we're actually very quickly saying, oh yeah, that movie can go. Cool. That's fine. And we feel safe to let it go. So yes, if there's anything else that's ready to let go for you, we're creating this space and funnel for. So go ahead and give permission and let it shift.
Yes.
Ooh. I feel like this big wind tunnel pickup. It's like big energy, like cyclone around you. Hold on to your chair. And for anyone listening as well that wants that activation, I've created a container space before we came on that this call speak to who it needs to. And so go ahead and give permission to shift what you're ready to through all time and space in your life. Make sure you're in a safe and grounded space, maybe not be driving, listening to this, and allow your highest self, connecting with your higher self to really facilitate and acknowledge that. Tap in, give permission, yes, and good.
I literally was thinking right before you said that, I hope listeners get this too.
And then just grounding back in to your breath, because this call I did create a container space. I normally go into container space when we're talking about these things. And so we want to just ground in, anchor into your breath, deep breath, inhale through the nose, exhaling through the mouth, and really acknowledging your soul, your highest self, any guides that you have supporting you, just God, the universe, what it is that supports you, that you can honor and see your oneness with. Give acknowledgement, validation, give gratitude to that. And then we just drop back down into space now. And make sure you get plenty of water and rest, because it seems simple. It knocks your fucking socks off.
I could feel it, like, oh wow, that was, for those of you listening that played with us in that, like, yeah, it's still moving through my body. Like I could
It's
still
tingles. It's tingle. Yeah. Yeah. And that was just like a little quickie. Like when we really dive in, it's like worlds start moving and we're like, whoa, okay, cool.
You just answered the question of what do you do with the clients?
It's actually so different what I do with clients. So I go into deep quantum dimensional shamanic healing sessions, like where people have big things that they want to drop into. And the way that the methodology works, it's if someone's as deeply as they're willing to surrender, we can shift it in microseconds and it's gone. It doesn't exist anymore. And we're also bringing in frequency that can help create like grid works for business structures and things like that, where things can really accelerate quickly without a lot of the blocks and hindrances. And then on the consulting side, I create that with businesses and like look at branding and strategy, and does it align to your soul? Is this what your soul is calling to express? And then we work through any blocks and set you off into the world to take on.
So good. Still releasing.
Yeah, it's going to be rolling for a while. You guys listening, don't be surprised if like those things that were blocking are no longer existing, as well as if things that maybe were in the way of that might start coming up for you. So don't be surprised. Just know that it's going to start unlocking.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for having me here. Thanks to everyone listening.
Double thank you now for even just applying your magic real time and feeling that. So received.
It's so fun. I love it.
Oh, so good. All right. Well, even more evidence now, ladies. Go find this woman. Thank you so much, Georgie, for coming on.
Thank you so much. Beautiful. Thank you.